Hello, my name is Vicente Mateu and I am a Marie Curie researcher at the Spanish Research Council, and I'm going to tell you about my experience as an international outgoing fellow. As you may have noticed already, I'm actually not standing on this room. However, I was so excited about this presentation that I decided to record a video. This is the outline of my talk. First, I will introduce myself. Then I will explain why I decided to go to the USA and why in particular I chose MIT. Then I will explain you the strategy that I followed to prepare my application, and in particular I will also explain the issues I had to confront. And finally I will give you a few useful tips. So let me talk a little bit about myself. So you may wonder what kind of scientist I am. So I'm a theoretician. In particular my field of expertise is particle physics. I'm an expert on quantum chromodynamics, that is the theory of the strong interactions. And in particular, I work on collider physics. So colliders, for colliders, I mean like the Large Hadron Collider or LEP. So this might sound a little bit bizarre to you, but I'm pretty sure you already heard about the Higgs boson and its recent discovery at the LHC. I had finished my PhD in January 2008, and I moved as a postdoc to the Max Planck Institute in Munich in February 2008, that is immediately after. However, I only defended my PhD, my thesis, in summer 2008. Then I applied for the Marie Curie International Outgoing Fellow in summer 2009. By Christmas 2009, I was notified by email that I had been awarded with a fellowship. On December 2010, I moved to the USA and I started my Marie Curie researcher position at the MIT. I stayed there essentially for 2 years, 2011 and 2012. These 2 years correspond to the outgoing phase. During 2013, I'm spending 1 year at the Spanish Research Council. This is referred to as the return phase, and in particular, I'm working in a research center in Valencia. This is the last slide about myself. The good news is that I got a 5-year postdoc position at the University of Vienna. Although even though it sounds very appealing because it is 5 years, it's actually not a tenure track, it's just a regular postdoc, so it's not a real job yet. The bad news is that even though I've been applying to many permanent jobs, tenure tracks, and junior professorships, so far I've been unsuccessful. However, you know that we are all living a very difficult situation, and I'm definitely optimistic about the future. Let me now explain why I decided to go to the USA and to MIT. Well, I had already been to the USA and I knew it was a fun place to be. And I had already been to Boston and I also knew it was a very nice city, and it's normally said that it is the most European city in the USA. Also, MIT is a great institution and I knew it was going to be very good for my CV to have been a researcher there. And also, Harvard is only 2 subway stations from MIT. At this point you may wonder why didn't I simply apply for a regular postdoc at the MIT? Well, it's not so simple. Actually, many times they do not offer postdoc position one particular year, or the year you want to apply they may be focusing on other kind of physicists, right? On the other hand, I already had a collaborator at MIT, and this simplifies things enormously because it's much simpler for the institution to accept you. And finally, you have to keep in mind that actually your contract is being signed with a return host, that is the institution in Europe, and they have to go with a lot of bureaucracy, so you have to make sure that the institute is actually positive and willing to do that. This is probably one of the most important slides of this presentation, so if you have been sleeping until now, it's probably a good moment to wake up. So, the situation of a regular postdoc is that many candidates apply to one university and then this university will pick 1, perhaps 2 candidates. So normally what you do is you apply to many universities and you will end going to the one that actually chose you. For the Marie Curie case, it's a little bit different because when you apply for the Marie Curie, you choose one university, and if you actually are awarded, you will go precisely to that university and no other. So it has obviously advantages. Let me now tell you a little bit about the project I submitted with my application. So the idea was to study event shapes at collider with effective field theories, and in particular using soft collinear effective theory. And these two pictures that are there to confuse you are actually the first two pictures that I found googling the word jets. What I believe were the strong points of my application are the following. First, it involved cutting-edge science. In particular, it involved physics performed at the Large Hadron Colliders. The project had already started, so it was rather simple to explain it and to develop it. Also, great institutions were involved, such as the MIT, the Max Planck Institute, and the Spanish Research Council. And finally, also great scientists were involved, in particular André Hoang, Ian Stewart, and Germán Rodrigo, who is the scientist in charge of my Marie Curie. And finally, I think it's a good advice that you should describe yourself as an expert, as a young promise in science. And it's important not try to be shy or modest, because it's in your own interest to appear as a really, really good candidate. And the same goes true for the project that you are actually presenting. Of course, there are no free lunches in this world, so if you want to be awarded, you have to do a decent job with your application. And this part is actually not fun, at least it was not for me, and it's definitely not an afternoon task. You should ask the scientist involved to revise your application, and in particular part B of your application. And you should keep in mind that this is at least an order of a month task, and you should start soon. And if you have a friend, or a friend of a friend, or a friend of a friend of a friend, and so on, who has been successful in his or her application, you should ask this person to send it to you. And finally, you should also ask the girls in the EU office in Bavaria to have a look at it and give you advice. This is the only issue I had to face during my application. And actually what you have to do is to make sure that the return host can actually take you. And this might seem completely trivial, but it is not. So in my case, for instance, I wanted to go to the MIT, and then I wanted to come back in the return phase to CERN, because it's also a great institution, and it would also look great on my CV. So I contacted them, and they were very happy to take me. We started to do all the bureaucracy. They went through my application, and all of a sudden I got this email from one of the secretaries there telling me that they just realized they could not take me because they are CERN and they have a status of an international organization, and it is completely forbidden for them to host someone to make a CERN contract for a person who is actually not working there every day, right? So this actually was very stressing for me. So this is maybe the most important message of this talk, right? Do not take CERN as your return host, even if in the application instructions it said it's as an example of a place you can go. So theoretically, it is not a problem of the EU. The EU is happy for you to go there. It's CERN who can actually not do it. Overall, the experience has been great. I think it is really worth the time, the effort, and if you want, also the pain. And moreover, once you are awarded, actually, you are pretty much done with the work. You can sit back and relax. And actually, what you will see is that there are many emails interchanged back and forth between the research agency and your return institution. They will make CC to you, but you don't have to do anything about it. The only thing that you have actually to take care of is to start getting your visa, because this may take some time, especially if you go to the US, and this may delay your starting date, and you don't want to do that. That happened to me, but it was not anything really bad. And finally, of course, you want to, when you do your application, you say that these are my goals, and of course you want to achieve them. And in my case, things are happening at the right pace. I'm accomplishing my goals, but this may not be your case, and you don't have to be stressed with that. Science doesn't progress in a linear way, and I don't think they are going to take all the money away from you if you don't achieve 100% of your goals. Let me finish by giving you a few tips. The first set of tips concerns preparing your application. So most important, you should start your application as soon as possible, of course. Second, you should not choose CERN as your return host. I will not insist more on that. Third, you should try to get your eyes on a successful application, as it will save you a lot of time. And finally, when writing Part B, you should not be worried or concerned if you feel that you are repeating some things many times, and this is normal in the nature of the application that you are doing. The second set of tips assumes that you are actually successful. You were awarded with the fellowship and you moved to the new country. So first, if you plan to buy a laptop or books or any kind of material, in general, my advice is that you do it while you are in the outgoing host country, in the outgoing phase, because in general it is cheaper. If you want to buy a laptop, it's generally cheaper in the US, for instance. And normally you have less issues with bureaucracy, because since it's not their money, the returner doesn't really care about if you keep the laptop or if it's too expensive or anything. Second, you should take advantage of the situation. You have to think that you will go there and you have your salary, but on top of that you have a lot of money that you can spend in, as I said, books or laptops, but also to go to conferences, to do scientific visits for collaboration. You can go and give seminars. You should make good use of the money. Also, you should try to meet other fellows in your area. There are many Curies around, and normally if you meet them, you can exchange tips, and then you have people to hang out and have a good time. And finally, this is again something that may sound trivial, but it's not. You should make sure, you should talk to the people in the outgoing host country, and make sure that they regard you as a postdoc and not as a visiting scientist, because sometimes they have special treats or special advantages for postdocs, and you want to be part of that. So you want to have the same privileges as other, let's say, regular postdocs. Well, that's the end of it. As you may imagine, I 100% recommend applying for an international outgoing fellowship. I think it's an excellent opportunity. And from my own experience, if you go to the US, which is a very competitive environment, but if you succeed, if you are actually successful there, you will become a much better scientist. And I think it will also significantly increase your chances of getting a better position. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed, and I thank you for your attention. I cannot take any questions, I'm sorry about that, but hopefully Verena will be able to address many of them. Thank you very much again.